In your mind, what were the if you had to like rank the most important takeaways from the reason? I should have probably told you I was going to ask you this, and you could have formulated your thoughts, but you can do that anyway. Like, what do you think in your opinion, some of the primary takeaways were from the winter warm up and all the conversations?
Are we talking? Do I have the choice of the field, or is it only on the field?
No, you have your choice. No, you have your choice of anything.
Oh,
now, if you start talking to me about Fred Bird's costume or something, I may have to cut you off.
No. There is nothing bigger with more tentacles and more influence on the coming year than the Cardinals acknowledging, which we knew already that they were going to get full payment from Valley Sports Midwest Diamond Sports Group, but that they are going to spend the next 5-6 months exploring what it means to be their own network, what that looks like, so that they're ready at the end of the year for the possibility, and by tomorrow it could be the guarantee, or within 48 hours it could be the guarantee that they get their rights back at the end of this season. They want to be in position to do it themselves. If that's the route to go, it's to be determined. But you could definitely see all the ways that could influence what's ahead for how fans watch games, how fans get tickets. They brought up the fact that they could bundle, access to their games with ticket sales. So you're the season ticket holder for the Cardinals, you got access to their streaming app, something along those lines, right? All of that is possible. And then, of course, the product on the field is directly related to that because they're not even into the gut, the real jackpot of their rights deal. If it ends at the end of this season, they have only now they're not even yet at the average of their $1 billion deal. So they're going to have to get that back. Now, they could, in theory and in likelihood, make more money by doing it themselves, ultimately. But that ultimately is doing a lot of heavy lifting there for the near future. So I don't think there's anything bigger than that. Not at all. Second was probably, I think the frank discussion of a rebuild. They have a lot of expiring contracts, a lot of notable ones. And does that mean that if this goes south, that something dramatic is coming the Cardinals' way? And then down ballot from there, Tommy Edmonds' recovery from wrist surgery. I think Oliver Marmol talking about the trust in the clubhouse and Daniel Descalso echoing that. And then a sleeper that fits snugly along with that topic is Brendan Donovan's clear presence. And, it's something Adam Wainwright mentioned. It's something Paul Goldschmidt mentioned this past season about, Brendan Donovan being a real voice in the clubhouse that, that people gravitate to. And then we got a chance to see it, and then Ben Fredrickson wrote in more detail. Ben Fredrickson, by the way, Missouri Sports Writer of the Year.
Congratulations. Well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. And then he wrote in greater detail just about Brendan Donovan's growing presence as a leader for that team. And I think that's a real interesting factor here.
Yeah, I particularly enjoyed that piece because I was adamant, as the offseason got underway, that they would not trade Brendan Donovan, and primarily for that exact reason. The people that run the team, front office, manager, believed that he was going to emerge as a great leader because he wanted to be a great leader. And they encouraged him, hey, we want you to do this like now, because you have it in you to do it. And I'm really glad that story fires me up. It really does, because Brendan Donovan can be a very special Cardinal. He can be here for a very long time. And Derrick, I want to ask you about this. I don't think there's any BS about that. I think this is a real thing, and I think it's not just some tale they're trying to spin. I think they really mean it, and I think he really means it, and I think that's pretty cool because I think they need a younger guy to kind of step into that role.
Absolutely. No, there's nothing I mean, he's always been, even going back to when he was a prospect coming up, when he was a prospect, kind of had his breakthrough and really asserted himself as a prospect and then made the team and contributed. There's a style about his game that has now become the decibel level of his voice, and that's probably the way it goes, right? I mean, we've seen that before. We've seen that with a couple of the guys who have recently been bench coaches for the Cardinals, right?
Right.
I mean, that's how it was for Skip Schumacher. That's how it was for Daniel Vizquel. So that's what you saw. I mean, and he's in that mold. Both of them were guys who grew into that leadership role, found their voice, and then had no issue holding their peers to being better, just as they held themselves.
Derrick Goold with us here on 590 The Fan, KFNS, the Bernie Miklasz show, and there's so many different parts of this. I thought that, in fact, Ben Fred wrote a column on Wilson Contreras I thought was really, really good. But in general, there's been a lot of talk about Contreras, and I wanted to ask you this. You can turn back the dial a little bit and look back to spring training and how awkward that was and how the conditions certainly were not favorable to get off to a smooth start. New catcher replacing a living legend. And, pitchers who are so used to having Ineffecchiati do everything for them. And not all the pitchers, but a lot of them. And what a bad start to a relationship. How much better is it this year, and how much better will it be because it seems like the three new starters are the type of people that will work with Wilson Contreras instead of judging him against Molina's career and standards, which is unfair to any catcher.
Yeah. I mean, you and I talked about this when I was there with you in the studio, that we both think like Lance Lynn and him might hit it off pretty well. They both talked about it. I mean, they both have kind of that we don't suffer fools. We're not going to suffer from each other, but we're going to stand together. It'd be a heck of a tag team, team. It'd be a heck of a wrestling tag team. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Just because they have no time for anybody's nonsense. And I think they're going to hit it off for that. But I think that's a big part of this is Sonny Gray's coming in to throw to Wilson Contreras, not coming in wondering what it was like to throw to Yadier Molina. That was a big topic last year, and I got some pushback when I brought it up, in the manager's office and elsewhere, by this notion that why are you trying to change Wilson Contreras to be what you guys want? Y'all spent $80 million plus for him to be Wilson Contreras. That's the deal. Adjust to him. And I understand where they're coming from, that they want him to be better and they want everybody to be better and they want to help them be better, but they don't need to make them different. I mean, it's I was always told that you're not going to change the person you marry. You got the person you marry. That's the person you married. Don't count on them changing. There was a little element of that, right? You're not going to morph him into that. And I think the way Wilson handled it was so pro. He and Nolan Arenado had moments this past year that were just so professional. Wilson was how he handled the team, and Nolan notably was how he handled questions from the media with his performance, and also going to the All-Star game, and why he went there to Seattle. Those two guys and the choices that they made in those moments, I just think were two of the most pro moves I've seen around that clubhouse. And Wilson is better for it. I think, his teammates adored him after that, and they owed him big after that. Some of them did. Some of them owed him personally after that. And I think the fans embraced him, and then he went out and had a 900 OPS in the second half, one of his best second halves offensively, and he improved as a catcher. So he did all the things. It just happened, in the second half of a season, which, okay, that's fine. That's how this goes. That's what you wanted. And I think he's in such a good spot. It's an interesting spot because now they're bringing Yadier Molina back. But I think he's comfortable he always was confident that he could be the Wilson Contreras for them, and that would be enough. But I think he's also confident in knowing that, like, that is enough. And I don't have to be this guy. I can be great on my own. I don't have to be great in their definition. And I think we watched that happen in real time, and it put him, his manager, all the pitchers, and the new guys coming in a good spot. I think he's going to resonate really well with, Sonny Gray's competitiveness, and like we talked about, Lance Lynn's no nonsense, and Kyle Gibson is a lot like Adam Wainwright in how he approaches games, so that's going to be a fit. Miles Miklasz and the way he talked about Wilson and what he wanted from Wilson, I think there's a lot. It's something you and I will talk about more, but I think there are some ripple effects from that 200th win from Wainwright that, though Wainwright won't be on the field, will carry into 2024. And Wilson's confidence and what that meant to him to provide the run and help guide Wainwright through that is enormous.
Derrick Goold with us for a few more minutes if he still has the time, and I appreciate it. I don't think we talked about this when you visited the studio last week, but even if we did a little bit, we can talk about it more now because we have new listeners and all that stuff. What's your read on the Cardinals' decision to just kind of hold off on talking an extension with Paul Goldschmidt?
Well, I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think it's. I also don't think it's only the Cardinals, to be candid.
Right.
And what I asked, what I asked later too is, is that kind of a mutual feeling? Paul Goldschmidt is not going to say anything publicly about his contract. When asked about it, he'll say, "I'm not going to say anything publicly about my contract," but he'll say enough about what he wants to win. And how he wants to win to know that he has a few years remaining to do it. And he's in a position where he can go, all right, well, I'd like to see where the Cardinals are going. He has earned that spot in his contract to do so. And to go, all right, where are they headed? What do they look like? Does this look like the place? He has had a great experience, obviously, with the Cardinals, and a terrible season. Which way do they go? And that gets us back to kind of this inflection point that they're at as a team. I think both sides want to do it. There are some other ramifications of it, Bernie. Can I say the quiet part out loud here?
Sure.
Okay, so he makes so much money, right? And he's going into the back half of, he's in his back half of his 30s, and he's going toward the probably the final years of his career. He has said many times he's not going to be playing when he's in his 40s like Albert Pujols was. He doesn't have interest in that. We'll see, but it still doesn't change the fact that he's going in the back years. And there are rules as to what the Cardinals can offer him as far as a salary. If he doesn't, he has to become a free agent first. We saw this with Adam Wainwright, where if they want to offer him a reduced salary, say they want him to make 50%, right?
Right.
They can't do that by rule unless he becomes a free agent. And so there's an element of that, too, where there is a structure by which they could offer him an extension if they know that financially they don't want to do that same kind of salary that he has now for the years to come, because they say, well, he's getting older for whatever reason, right? Or they don't know what their TV situation is going to be. Then you would see that, like, there's just some limits there. That's not going to put a chill on the possibility of him sticking around for the remainder of his career. I don't want to give that perception, but it does create this mechanic where they have to at least wait. They might have to wait till the end of the season for that deal to take place, if that's the structure they're talking about. Just to kind of put that, I hope I explained that well.
Yeah, you did. No, I totally get it. I have one more like that for you, though.
Yeah.
Another one of those, what is your read question. But what is your read on the fact that the Cardinals are going to hold off before deciding what to do in terms of offering Ali Marmol an extension?
All right, good. Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah, is this a matter of they've kind of thrown down, like they expect to see this, that,
Yeah.
and he's sort of on notice, I guess, is the best way to put it, right?
Well, that's how he put it.
Yeah, that's right.
Hasn't he put it that way?
Yeah,
right?
he kind of has.
I mean, he kind of did. I'm struck by the fact that, I talked to Oliver Marmol about this subject, his expiring contract and the hires all around him, and the losing season at the winter warm-up. And I talked to him about it before. We had a conversation during the season about it, towards the end of the season, because I wanted to ask him about, what authority he thought he brought back, what kind of mandate he brought back if he didn't have a contract extension. And he said, I'll give that some thought. And, we kind of talked through I'm being honest with you and your listeners, we talked through whether or not that was a fair question from me. We agreed that it was. I thought it was, but
sure
I understand his spot. And then he gave me an answer, right, at the winter warm-up. I'm sorry, at the winter meetings in Nashville. And I wrote a story about it, and Mo gave me an answer, which I think is the most telling answer of all, and I'll get to that. Then over the weekend, at a press conference, all the cameras, this is being broadcast, the Cardinals are recording it, everybody's going to use it. He faces that question again. I was really struck today when I saw Mike Tomlin walk out when asked about his contract.
That's right, he did.
And Oliver Marmol sat there and took the questions and answered them professionally, respectfully, accountably, and said, look, if that's what motivates me, then what have I been doing for 2 years? What have I been doing for 18 years with the club? If that's what I need for motivation, look, I'm not thinking about that. And I think he means it. And, you can tell when, a guy is willing to articulate his feelings versus the big bad NFL coach walking out of the room. I was really struck by that. And, it's such, better than anybody, Bernie, the culture of the media with the NFL and
right.
how it is with baseball. But goodness, what a contrast in 24 hours between the two sports and two leaders. One who said, you don't have the right to the answer, and the other one who said, you have every right to the answer, which brings us to what Mozeliak told me. And while DeWitt said that he expects things to go better this year and expects to have Oliver Marmol, the manager, for years to come, that is what he said. That's what the chairman said. What Mo said, I think, was more revealing when he told me that if it becomes an issue and this question becomes louder, or the perception within the clubhouse or the perception within the staff becomes an issue, then he will address it and they'll talk about it. But he didn't feel the urgency to do so because he didn't think it's going to be an issue. But he's obviously aware of it. It's hard not to be with Yadier Molina back in uniform and all the other stuff going on. The fact that they want to avoid that first back-to-back losing seasons in a long time. And the fact that they want to see some things in spring training improve. They won the Grapefruit League title last year. But they weren't exactly thrilled with their style of play.
Yeah.
Nor were they all that encouraged by what kind of team they had, because they didn't have a lot of it for the World Baseball Classic. So they want to see what it's like in spring training. But I thought it was interesting that Mozeliak said that he had his ear to the ground for rumbles. And if there was a train of turmoil on the way, that he would address it and look into the contract to make it right.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Ollie's really in a fascinating situation because it's one of the opening things that happened in the winter warm-up, and I'm taking this from, something you wrote just when you set the scene, was that Mozeliak, in effect, one of his opening gambits, or whatever you want to call it, was to, sort of pimp the crowd a little bit about, hey, what do you think about Yanni being back? And I thought, whoa, wait a minute now. That's really interesting because sort of – there's a narrative out there whether the Cardinals like it or not. It doesn't matter. There is a narrative out there. Well, Yadi's will be the guy to replace Marmol. And they surely have to be aware of that, whether it's not true or whether it may be true. But for Mo to sort of start the winter warm-up with hey, how do you all feel about Yadi coming back?
Yeah,
I'm like,
with
whoa.
With the equivalent of that, then if Oliver Marmol got up there and go, what do you guys think about we hired Chaim Bloom?
That's exactly right.
Is that right.
Yeah.
I think that's oversimplifying. That's really not what. But it is true that both of the advisors, and Benjamin Hockman touched on this in a column. It is true that both advisors come with some intrigue, right?
Right.
How it turns out, we don't know. But Chaim Bloom from outside, he's led two other organizations. Yadier Molina coming, back, aspires to be a manager. It's a really fascinating. They're not understudies, but they got. I mean, they're not in the wings looking to take over the lead roles, but they're in the front row.
Right.
So, if the producer of the show is looking for someone to take the spotlight and points to the front row, they're pretty ready.
I know, and it's like I don't even know how to describe this in a way to describe it in a way that not makes sense, but in a way that just would sum it up nicely. Which is, it isn't just is Ollie is Molina waiting in the wings? Is this something that's going to happen if they get off to a bad start? Yadi taking over. It's not that simple because then you have Descalso in the mix. Mm-hmm. And he's a really smart guy with ambitions of his own, and he's also tough enough to maybe clean some things up that need to be cleaned up. I would think Descalso would be really good at least certain things of being a first-time manager. So it's almost like two of them are waiting in the wings, if not directly. They're still there, and their presence is pretty obvious, and the Cardinals front office and Ollie actually clearly think very highly of both of those guys. So how does the Molina-Descalso thing work? Is that going to be a good, smooth relationship?
Yeah, I think it will be. There's a lot of mutual respect there.
Right. I agree.
There's also so much responsibility that the bench coach has that there's just I don't really know how to compare it because it's not like the backup quarterback thing. I think there might be an element of that with Yadier, right? Like his backup quarterback that you see with college. Well, he must be better. Oh, he must be better. You might get that a little bit, but with Scalzo, he's so present, and there's going to be real clear influences from him, which I just want to add this is by design. Marmol said it at the winter warm-up, and I wonder if folks heard it exactly kind of what he was saying, but they should, is that, the bench coach role, he wants to be the guy who wants to be a manager. Like, for him, he wants that to always be the case. That's a fit for him. That's a little different than what other folks want from that bench coach role. But Oliver, he said straight up that, with the bench coach, he would like for that guy to aspire to be manager and be ready to do so. I think it's really interesting, and in a way that's his paying it forward too, because he got to be that guy for Schiltz, and he likes that kind of challenge. Contract isn't a motivator, but he likes to have a guy there who's competitive like he is and wants to move up. And I think that's going to be a real fascinating element. We'll see. Oliver Marmol could be the manager here for a long time. We don't know. But if he is, then he's going to create a tree because that's what he wants. That's his goal with that position, to have someone who wants to take the job just ahead of him.
Derrick Goold, you are the best. I'll talk to you soon. I know you're taking a little bit of a timeout coming up later this week, and I hope you have a chance to have some fun and relax a little bit doing that. But I can't wait to our next conversation. But until then, be safe, be well, be happy, and enjoy.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll be back next week.
Okay.
I'm going to hide out for a little bit, but I'll be back in town to chat with you next week.
All right, my friend. That's Derrick Goold, our friend from STL Today, my longtime friend, longtime teammate. I still consider us teammates because he does the show once a week, so that makes us teammates. Fired up about that. I think the inner dynamics down there are really, really interesting because Marmol is adamant about the subject. Well, there's multiple subjects, but he's adamant about all of them, which is, number one, he doesn't care if he's going into the season without a contract extension, which makes him, at least in theory, some people would call it a lame duck, although I do think unless it's a disaster, the Cardinals will give him a contract extension. But they're holding off, so that tells you that they are trying to send a message and just kind of let him know, hey, some things have to change, and I have a really good idea of what those things are. But, I talked to Ali recently, and he was adamant. Like, no problem. I learned a lot from last year. I got to prove things to myself. I'm ready for the challenge. I want the challenge. And, he almost just kind of came flying out of his chair because he was so fired up about that thing. And, you ask him about, well, wouldn't that be tough if Yachty? No. I'm arguing, doing everything I can to convince the Cardinals to bring him in here. We want him in here. I don't care what the role is. We can all be better because of Yadier Molina. And so the dude is either going to be in line for like an Emmy Award, or he's really, really prideful and passionate and believes that, number one, things have to be earned. Contract security has to be earned after what happened last year. He gets it, and he thinks it's right for it to be that way. And the other thing is that I know that he does not want to be this insecure, paranoid manager, kind of like one of the managers the Cardinals had after Tony La Russa, who thinks everyone's out to get him. There's forces of evil conspiring to take his job, and when managers get like this, and oh, by the way, Ali Marmol was there with Mike Matheny as a coach. He was there with Mike Schilt as a coach. So for different reasons, both of those managers kind of got squirrely. He saw that. So rather than become, paranoid and go home and talk about or pull a writer aside and talk about how, they're out to get me. They're bringing Yachty in. They're out to get me. No, he's he's diving headfirst into taking the opposite view of this. He wants it, bring it on. He's going to learn from Yachty, and hopefully Yachty will learn some things from him. But the idea of looking over his shoulder, no way, no how. Hey, we were awful last year, and nobody should feel secure, and nobody should be offended by any condition attached to the job about keeping the job. And I believe him, except it's one thing to say it, and I do believe him 100%, because he keeps saying it over and over and over again. And if he didn't mean it, he'd be making an absolute fool of himself, and he would lose credibility. So now he's got to really back that up by the way he acts. So if they get off to a bad start and things are a little tense early, is he going to start, like doing the Scott Linehan or the Mike Matheny? And you say, well, what the hell are you talking about, the Scott Linehan? Scott Linehan, once he was convinced people were conspiring to take his job, he sort of stayed in the office. He wouldn't come out. He just got so overwhelmed by the situation. It's like he just shut down. They'd have to go get him out of his office. And it wasn't that bad with Mike Matheny, but every waking moment, Mike Matheny was convinced there were enemies out to get him. And you can't lead or manage that way. You just can't. You have to be like, bring it on. I don't care. This job should be earned. There's got to be standards. I should be held to, hey, you need to do this. We need that. We want to see this. He's like, bring it on. That's the way it should be. Because I want to be great at this job. Now, those of you who don't like him, all right, you can laugh. That's fine. And I'll repeat. It's one thing to say it, and I do believe him when he says it because he's putting himself on the line when he says it. He doesn't have to do that. Being as adamant and forceful about this as he is. But sorry for the redundancy, but he's also going to have to play it out and live up to that if things get a little tense instead of shutting down and getting defensive and paranoid. It's a very interesting situation, to say the least. And one thing about the 2024 Cardinals, which is kind of funny because the constant obsession over the payroll, there are so many other subplots shaping up going into the season that, to me, are so much more interesting. You know, and there's a lot of different things you're going to have to play out. And some of those things you have to go one way or the other. That's pretty dramatic. But what do I know? I should be spending 3 hours a day talking about payroll and parsing every single word or sentence that Bill DeWitt III and Bill DeWitt Jr., every sentence related to payroll, parsing it 500 times, looking for the hidden meanings, writing columns about a sentence or what. I mean, it's just like, you know, y'all need to look around because there's some really juicy subplots that are a hell of a lot more meaningful and entertaining than studying sentences about payroll. Because even the payroll stuff, I think the Cardinals are going to add a reliever. I think they're going to spend some more money. I don't know what they're going to pay or they're willing to pay. I think they're trying to upgrade their bullpen. They're not going to sign Josh Hader, though, and anybody who wants to talk themselves into that needs to kind of go to a fading couch and take a cold rag and just pat your forehead with that for a while. It ain't going to happen. But who cares? I'm those of you who listen to me know this by now because I've been on this harangue. I'll keep this one short. I don't need payroll talk from the Cardinals. I don't really, at this point, I do not care what Mo says. I don't care with Bill DeWitt Jr., what he says about it, or Bill DeWitt III. It isn't that I don't want to hear from them. It isn't that I'm ripping them as people. It's just that we're going to find out if they made the right decision on what they're going to spend. We're going to find out based on what the record is, whether they win the division, make the playoffs, if they can make a postseason run, or this all comes tumbling down. Why the hell should I sit here and parse sentences, right? Soon enough, spring training starting, and then soon after that, real baseball is going to be played. That's when we're going to get the answers about the payroll and whether they blew it or whether they played it just right. And again, I try to always educate myself, and I did in this situation. When I look at all the teams that have spent more money than the Cardinals, who were absolute flopping failures, and I look at teams that have spent less than the Cardinals and they're playing in the World Series, it's like, why the hell am I sitting here day after day after day stewing over what's being said about payroll by the team? If you make really smart decisions and you clean up the bad fundamentals and you get smarter as a team, and you make sure that even if it's a high value, low cost reliever or two, and if they're good, I don't care what you spent for them. In fact, it's to your credit if they turn out to be a good reliever or relievers for the money you spent, which isn't what fans want. Oh, they didn't spend $8 million on him. Well, if they spent $2 million on a guy and he turns out to be a pretty damn good reliever, well, don't you tip your cap? Or do you criticize them? Because they made a value signing that worked out. This stuff, after a while, just becomes insane. So I'm insane by continuing to talk about why I don't want to talk about it, because I am talking about it, so that makes me nuts too. I get it.